Thursday. Yeah, there's a game on Tuesday against the Bucks. I don't want to do 2 non-mic pods in a row, obviously, but and doing it against the Bucks with a little more excitement than after the Pistons on Thursday. But whatever, I'll take it.
I'm going to Detroit next month. I just found out.
For work?
Yeah.
I've never been. Have you?
I've been to Michigan. I've been to some of the lakes and stuff, but never Detroit. Pretty excited.
Well, here we are. Well, no one's really here yet.
We're here.
We're here.
I wonder if people, I'm sure that it's a nice mix, but people that watch YouTube not live, if they skip this part, or
if they watch this part,
like, do they feel like they're like part of the live experience if they're watching it on like a Wednesday afternoon?
Well, this is like a bonus part. This is like behind the scenes, even though it's not behind the scenes. But this is the advantage to watching on YouTube is you get this part as opposed to, and this part doesn't end up on. This part doesn't end up on Spotify?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Twitch too. We got some.
Oh, sorry, Twitch. Sorry, Twitch.
Jackson, being honest, skips it. It's all right, Jackson.
You know what we should do? I wonder if on Tuesday or just during a game once doing something specifically for Twitch, just like hanging out on Twitch. But I don't really. We do so much podcasting. I just don't want to do like anything extra just for Twitch. I'm sorry, Twitch.
People always request like, oh, you guys should commentate the games live.
You can't. You're not allowed.
Not allowed. Plus, like, what entertainment value is that? We're just sitting here in silence watching the game. Like, we did a little bit of it during the review pod, the Apple Podcast reviews. But that was just like us not talking and then be like, okay, well, that just happened. Yeah, okay.
Do Barstool guys do that? Do they do live video during important games?
I'm not sure.
Because you're not allowed to say, you're not allowed to do play-by-play. Like that's against the copyright rules. So we could react to what's happening, but we couldn't like describe the events or whatever.
The only part of that makes sense is that people will immediately jump from the game to the stream right after. So it's like there, it's already up. People aren't waiting. But if it's like the beginning of the game, then I feel like it'd be a lot of dead air.
So our first co-host is there. We'll have to tell him as soon as you can hear us. Can you shake your head if you can hear us? All right. When we put you there, you're live. You're on the internet now. So we're already live. So just be aware.
We are live, Mr. Guest.
We're live. Well, you can't hear him yet. You want to put him in there? Have him be part of the filter for 30 seconds before the pod actually starts?
Up to you.
Put him in.
Come on.
There he is.
All right. I'm used to the live thing. You guys always do this. You start the pod as soon as I sign on.
Yeah. Yes. We start right away. So this isn't officially, this is not good. The part that we're talking about, this part now, will not end up in the final pod until I start doing the intro. This is just for the live people and the YouTube and the Twitch people.
This is for like the 300 people who are hardcore enough to be watching this on a Saturday morning.
Right.
Awesome.
Do you have a secret take for them?
I don't know. I don't know if I have any secret takes.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, so you get to be part of the whole experience. So what's going to happen here before I start is I'll do like the intro part, and then we'll do the song, and you'll be silent during the song. We can't talk during the song. And then we'll be back, and then it'll just be the pod.
Okay. Great.
And you're the first half. So, and then we have Alonzo. I had to balance out. Everybody hates you, but everybody loves Alonzo. So it felt like it was it.
Perfect.
Excuse me. All right, here we go. The Rice and Ricky Sanchez podcast is presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Sign up for DraftKings Sportsbook by using promo code RTRS and is brought to you by MortgageCS, the official mortgage broker of the Rights to Ricky Sanchez. Become a MortgageCS Ricky VIP by going to mortgagecs.com/Ricky. LL Pavorsky Jewelers, where Rights to Ricky Sanchez listeners go and get engaged, and the official sponsor of the Corner 3 newsletter with Zoe, Stateside Vodka. Get your Surfside iced tea and vodka at statesidevodka.com. On the show today, Mike is on vacation. He is load managing. So we have 2 guest hosts. The first half of the pod, you will despise. That will be co-hosted by one Andrew Sharp. And he wouldn't come on the pod as long as Mike was on the pod. So that whole thing, we'll investigate that whole thing. And then the second half of the pod is Zoe. of the Corner 3 newsletter. I think we had Zoe on once or twice before. So you can subscribe to the newsletter at rightstorickysanchez.com/newsletter. Before we get going, originally, the playoff T-shirt, the playoff motherfucker, not regular season bitch T-shirt, was going to stop being on sale at midnight last night. But for some reason, the shirt was down and you couldn't buy it all day. So it is going all the way through Sunday night at midnight. So just go to rightstorickysanchez.com. You can get the playoff T-shirt. Also, there's a safe for work version, which I think is funny if you would wear that for work just because the U and the C have asterisks instead of the letters. Like no one would know what it says. It's still the bad word, isn't it? But if you want the clean one, that is there too. And they will be available until midnight on Sunday. Without any further ado, Amos and the chef.
We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We was right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We were right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. Say the name.
Welcome to the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. I'm Spike Eskin. Mike is out, so we decided to get his number one enemy, that is Andrew Sharp, to co-host. Welcome, Sharp.
It's good to be here. A real honor to be here for the full intro, the DraftKings promo, the Amos song. You guys put together a graphics package on the YouTube show. I hadn't seen that before. You guys have really professionalized this idiotic operation you have here.
Yeah, we just keep hiring people who know how to do stuff. It was CJ, the producer who you saw before we started. CJ basically cold emailed us and was like, your YouTube looks like shit and I can work for you and make it look better. So I was like, all right, figure it out.
Great.
So,
a low bar for CJ to clear. Good for him.
For sure. So Sharp no longer write, if you haven't heard over the last couple of years, Sharp no longer writes for Sports Illustrated, still does his pod with Ben Golliver. It's no longer Open Floor. It's now Greatest of All Talk. You can get it at greatestofalltalk.com. You have to pay for it. And Sharp is now a lawyer. And I wonder what it is like for you to have a normal job, but also have to do this on the side. It seems like a lot to cover if it's not your normal job.
It is a lot to cover. Typically, the NBA is good enough to make it worthwhile, but I will say that I tried to watch the Sixers-Clippers game last night in preparation, and I just found myself shaking my head after about 6 minutes being like, God, this is such a terrible product, and I'm going to go back to the NCAA tournament. So there are moments like that during the 7-month regular season where you're like, all right, I think I'm good. And the playoffs and stuff like that, that makes it all worth it, though.
You know, it was funny. I didn't watch the game till this morning because it was on at 10:30 last night. And I honestly can't remember the last time I was up that late to watch a game at 10:30. And I was watching this morning. I was like, who the fuck is even on the Clippers? Who are these? I had no idea who anybody was. You know, the Morris guy I know, like Reggie Jackson I know, but the rest of the team, I don't even know who's on the team anymore. I guess with George and Kawhi out, I pay so they haven't even existed to me this year. That team.
Well, I mean, Terrence Mann, he's a big Mike Levin guy. He's had some moments out there. And then, you know, I found myself thinking the exact same thing watching the Sixers-Lakers earlier this week. Like the Lakers are trotting out guys I've never heard of at this point in the season and are still somehow a playoff team in the weak-ass Western Conference. So it's just a weird time of year here. And I think everybody's now ready for the playoffs.
So I've checked out of most of I don't listen to any basketball. I don't even listen to your basketball podcast anymore, which I enjoyed for many years. I checked out. I I think it was because I think the problem for me with most NBA media is the same problem with the league, is that they're obsessed. They're so obsessed with Twitter that everyone has the same opinion on everything. And I kind of got bored and I just didn't follow. What are the big storylines of the year even? Like what would you say are the things from the beginning of the season until now that you've talked about the most on the pod?
The Lakers, for the love of God, I don't want to talk about the Lakers like ever again.
Okay.
Because every 2 weeks there's been like a Lakers check-in, and the story with that team was obvious the second they traded for Westbrook. Like it was an idiotic move at the time. It was clear that LeBron was just restless and impatient and short-sighted, certainly, because like obviously Russ wasn't going to work in the playoffs, and the regular season, maybe it would have worked. But obviously it's been a disaster. So rehashing that over and over and over and over again has been like the dominant theme of the regular season. And then there are,
well, can I ask you about that for a second, honestly, because it goes back to the first thing I said. I remember when they traded for Westbrook, and I remember texting you, feeling like I was going crazy, that no one publicly was saying that this was obviously like a horrible fucking idea. Like there was, in my head, there was no debate that it was a horrible idea. And then even this recent string of LeBron scoring, which in my head, maybe I'm crazy, is obviously pathetic, is obviously like a distraction from how bad they are.
Dude, LeBron, he came out, he broke Karl Malone's record. He's now second all time on the scoring list. And he did that losing by 20 points to the Wizards. Like,
right.
Which is the saddest shit in the world if you've watched the Wizards, which unfortunately I have. And he's out there, like he celebrated it on Instagram or whatever. And like, I get it. It's a big accomplishment, but I think even LeBron fans can agree that this is the saddest way imaginable for him to like climb the all-time scoring charts.
Right. And I would say that the one basketball person who genuinely loves all of it and gives his true opinion, like Zach Lowe, I appreciate Zach. Because Zach has opinions and all those things. And I went and I listened to him do the podcast where they were talking about like all NBA, and Kevin Arnovich got on there and he was like, you know what LeBron James is doing this season, I think you have to put him on first team all NBA. And I was just like, what the fuck are we doing? Like they were celebrating this at 37, him being 15 games under 500. So it goes back to the Lakers thing, and I can understand being tired about talking about it, is just so obvious to me, and no one seems to ever want to confront what the obvious, like what's going on here, at least
yes.
in what I see, at least what I consume.
I think that's exactly right. And it was frustrating all summer long because a lot of people felt like they had to at least pay lip service to the idea that the Lakers could be a title contender, and gave them the benefit of the doubt, despite like years and years of evidence that Westbrook is a real problem in the playoffs. And just like conceptually, the fit never really made any sense. And then it's become equally maddening. Like during the season, there's been some palace intrigue with the Lakers, like who was making these calls, and does Rob Pelinka have to own these failures this year? And you think back, it's like, like LeBron and AD were meeting with Westbrook in LeBron's backyard. He was like holding job interviews. He had DeRozan come visit him. Like LeBron is the one calling the shots with that team. And it's kind of insane that there's this obligation to pretend otherwise as everyone out there tries to spin it. And a lot of media sort of go along with it. I think LeBron should be on an all NBA team. I think the idea that he's first team all NBA this year is sort of insane to me, but maybe some of the media will go along with it. I loved Zach's response to Arnovitz on that pod.
He was trying to be he didn't want to make anyone mad, but he was also he tried to give a real opinion on that.
Yeah, he was honest without being disrespectful. He didn't necessarily say like LeBron's out there stat padding, but this goes back years. And you and I had talked about this as well. Like LeBron is so good that he can just hit cruise control and still put up like a triple double. Like if you go back, this started early in his career when he was playing. It was Cavs Magic, I think. It was before he left Cleveland. He had like a really bad loss. It may have been Cavs Celtics, but in any event, he averaged like a triple double for the series and was just out. The final 2 games, he was totally on cruise control and his mind was somewhere else. And like that was the Delonte West stuff. Mm-hmm. But if you look at his numbers, he had an amazing series and looked like a Hall of Famer out there. But he has that ability to sort of check out and still put up Hall of Fame numbers.
Which is a testament to how good he is, but also you have to watch. Like you do have to see it. He would do that I was convinced for years he would not, when the Sixers were bad, that he would like purposely not try against them. Because people would go to see him and I'd see him and I'd be like, this is not the same LeBron that I would see in other games. And at the end of it, you would look and it was 27-9-9. And anyone who hadn't watched it would just suppose that he was great, but he wasn't great. So what else? So Lakers, you've rehashed a billion times. Anything else?
Well, there was Simmons and Harden, obviously.
Right. I mean, we'll get to that, by the way. You're going to be allowed to talk about that, by the way.
Yeah. So beyond that, I mean, there's this thing now where every month or so, everyone has different MVP arguments. And I'm not super like enthusiastic about any of that. I think the MVP is fun the final couple weeks of the season, but we do this like quarter marker argument, halfway through the season argument. Like that's sort of an NBA media feature these days. But, Embiid and Jokic has been an argument for the last few months, and that's been fun. Do you have a take on MVP?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's clearly Embiid. And it's not as a Sixers fan or whatever. I just think like a lot of it, I don't want to give you credit because I think you were wrong. But when you voted for Westbrook for MVP, the year that Westbrook did the triple doubles, your point was, this award is for like stories as much as it is for like it is about the feel of it, the narrative arc of it. It's not just about the numbers. If it was just about the numbers, then we wouldn't. Part of the fact that you can't really even identify what it is, like what most valuable even means, is part of why it's a cool award. And I just think that even though Jokic is a fantastic player, what he's done, I don't think is like, there's no story. It's not interesting. He's carried them, but he always sort of carries them. And I think what Embiid has done this year, I think shows a marked difference from year to year. And the fact that the Simmons thing was going on, he just didn't play. And the team is just like beyond their top couple of players is very, very thin, I think is amazing. And him being their best player on offense and their best player on defense is really unmatched by almost anyone in the last 30 years. Kawhi sometimes and LeBron sometimes, but so I think it's just like clearly him.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense to me. And I think one of the things that is working against Embiid is that a lot of people who are paid to talk about basketball and who tweet about basketball don't actually watch that much basketball.
Yep.
And to appreciate Embiid through the first half of this season, because what he's basically done was he took what could have been a lost season, carried this team, gave them life through the first half, and made them an attractive destination for James Harden, who ultimately, maybe it depends on how seriously you take Harden, but
again, we'll get to it.
In theory, he elevates them to like a title contender status, and Embiid should get credit for that as well. As much as Morey gets credit for waiting and playing the long game, like Embiid was the one who raised their baseline high enough so that another superstar would want to come join them. And all of that is a big deal. And you would have had to watch how ugly some of those Sixers lineups were to start the year to appreciate how ridiculous it's been. And I agree that the Westbrook vote is a good parallel, because you can also look at this and say, well, Giannis is clearly the best player in the sport. He's arguably the defensive player of the year. Offensively, he's better than he's ever been. And the Bucks are going to finish with probably the best record in the East. So why isn't he the MVP? And I just think that with this award, it does help to sometimes step back and say, all right, if you're telling the story of this season and you're talking to people who love basketball and watch basketball all year, where are most people going to start? And I think Embiid has a good argument in that context. And Giannis is one of those guys who, like, as he sort of establishes himself historically, all of that stuff is going to happen in the playoffs, and an MVP doesn't really matter at this point in his story. But Embiid, he deserves recognition for everything he's done this year.
Yeah, Giannis's greatness will become normalized unless he starts winning a bunch of championships. And I think that is what changed. Like, that was the difference with Jordan, right? There were plenty of people who scored a lot, but the fact that he won the title every year gave him a leg up in, I think, MVP voting. And it also, you know, like, there was the voters that got tired of it, but Giannis, like, if he starts becoming that sort of player, I actually think it will give him an advantage in MVP voting if he wins more titles.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I also, there's this impulse to sort of nitpick guys and say, oh, well, like, what's Joel Embiid going to do in the playoffs? And you could have the same conversation about Jokic, but, like, it's a regular season award. And I had this argument over and over again with Westbrook. It's like, even in 2017, I wouldn't want Westbrook on my team, but, like, you got to sort of step back and acknowledge that, you know, this guy defined where the league was for 82 games. And then the playoffs, it will be a completely different story. But like Embiid, what he's done these past 6 months is kind of incredible.
All right, I'm going to let you talk about Harden and Simmons, because I know that you're dying to do that. Before that, we have sponsor. You get to be part of the sponsor thing.
Great.
Right? So MortgageCS joined us last month. MortgageCS is a mortgage broker, not a lender. So they go and find the mortgage for you. CS stands for concierge service. So have you purchased a house before, Sharp?
Yes.
So obviously, mortgage rates, all of that shit is incredibly confusing. You go on the internet, and then you start learning about, like, what APR is, and the rate isn't always the rate, and you don't know who to trust, who not to trust. So what MortgageCS is an independent mortgage broker. By the way, they're local. They're in I think they're in Newtown. They're based in Newtown. They can help you out in Jersey, in PA, in Delaware, all that stuff. But they're an independent mortgage broker, which means they have no ties to any of the lenders. So their job is to help you out finding out what the best rate is. Their only goal is to help you through the process. Also, a lot of the ones, if you Google it, see it online, these are giant companies that spend most of their money on advertising to get you to go to them, which they have to make up for eventually. And MortgageCS doesn't do that. They are 9 people. And you can get right to the top whenever you want. So if you call or text 267-391-7425, that is Ben. He is their CEO. He will respond to you at any time. 267-391-7425. Or if you want to see what sort of partner they are to us, go to mortgagecs.com/Ricky and see the mini site they built for Ricky listeners with graphics and drawings and all that kind of stuff. When I met with them, I was blown away that they even told me, and I believe them, they're like, look, at the end of the day, if your listeners come to us, we don't even care if we're the people that get them the mortgage. We just want to educate people on what it means and what those things means and what those things mean and the process. Final thing I'll tell you is the other thing I learned is, again, when you Google and you go to something like Lending Tree and you put your email address in there, they just take your information, they sell it to lenders, and the lenders bug the shit out of you until you go to them. MortgageCS does not do that. So, and this whole thing about them getting back to you whenever you want, 267-391-7425. You could see a house at 5 p.m. on a Saturday and need a pre-qualification letter that night. You need a mortgage person who is going to be able to get you that, and that is MortgageCS for you all the time. MortgageCS.com/Ricky if you want to schedule a phone or in-person consultation, or just call or text Ben 267-391-7425 anytime. Try it right now, right this second, 267-391-7425, MortgageCS.com/Ricky. Now for the disclaimer, which everyone loves. This advertisement is not a commitment to lend or extend credit. MortgageCS is an equal housing opportunity mortgage broker and arranges with third-party providers and does not make any mortgage loan commitments or fund any mortgage loans. All loans are subject to credit approval. Certain restrictions apply. The information is presented for informational purposes by Rates for Us, LLC, DBA MortgageCS, Company NMLS 1464766, licensed by the PA Department of Banking and New Jersey Department of Banking and Insurance. Visit mortgagecs.com for more information. Ben Stucker, NMLS ID number 168345. Done.
Wow. Very impressive. Only a couple hiccups there.
Are you convinced?
I am convinced. Look, I did not work with MortgageCS, but I worked with a smaller mortgage specialty firm that was very helpful because we needed approval quickly. And had we worked with a bigger bank, we would have been completely screwed. So I support small businesses in that area.
There we go. They insist on we met at a diner halfway between New York City and Newtown just to talk it through. And like they're so in on all of it. I love it. And they have like their own coffee they give to people when they get a mortgage with them. It's like their own branded bags of coffee. Great. I told them I want Ricky branded bags of coffee. So anyway, on to the Sixers. How funny is it for you? Like the joy in your heart that we had to go from Ben Simmons, who you consider basically a fraud, I think, to James Harden, who you have been yelling about his fraudulence like for years. And your frenemy status with our listeners. I think for you, this has to be just a source of great joy.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit bittersweet because I did find myself really enjoying Embiid, really enjoying Maxey. And as the Simmons stuff spun out of control and got increasingly ridiculous, I was rooting for Morey to win the trade, whatever that meant. And so he ends up with Harden, and it's like, oh boy, so you're really going to bet the next couple of seasons on big game James? Good luck with that. And the first couple games, I had to sort of reevaluate everything because they look like the best team on earth. And Harden, I was like, wow, have I been wrong all these years? Is he about to turn the corner here? And lo and behold, for the last 3 weeks or so, he has absolutely sucked. And it's funny with Harden because Simmons was
making everyone so mad. Right
no, I don't know. I don't know if I am making them mad because I think a lot of Sixers fans probably know this in their core and are fighting it. I think Mike is fully Harden pilled. I talked to him about this and he was all in the night of the trade. He's very excited about what this means. I think most other Sixers fans are probably coming in with their eyes wide open here. But in any event, the thing that I find interesting about Harden is that he's similar to Ben Simmons in as much as both of them are eye test players. Like the idea of Simmons, you can look at his numbers and you can understand what he's good at and say, oh, like this guy fits. And this guy could definitely be part of a championship contender, like for several seasons. And Harden, you can make the same case until you watch him play some of these games and watch some of the bullshit that he gets into on offense, just sort of like reflexively at this point. Like I think he's learned some of these tactics and they're so ingrained that I don't know if he knows how to play a different way. I also don't know if he still has a first step. Oh, well, I just got a YouTube comment. What the F is this guy talking about? I don't know, man. Maybe I'm wrong, but like I watch Harden, he goes to the step back over and over and over again. And he just is completely disinterested in getting into the lane anymore. And when he gets into the lane, all he's trying to do is initiate contact. he's not really even looking at the hoop 75% of the time. And all of that is going to become a lot more problematic by the time you get to the playoffs, which is all that should really matter. If Embiid is in his prime and having an MVP year, like the goal is to win the title. So needless to say, it is kind of hilarious that you guys are going to be stuck rooting for this guy. But maybe Tyrese Maxey can redeem all of it and Harden will be like a great third wheel. Who knows? I want
to talk about Maxey in a second, but first I want to get to the Harden thing. So, repeating, I did not watch the game live last night. I woke up, looked at the tweets, and I saw a bunch of the tweets about Harden having 25 in the first half. And I'm like, all right, because there are games in the beginning, even the first half of maybe the Cleveland game, he did look great. And he did, he didn't look like the Harden from 4 or 5 years ago physically, but he did look like he had a control over the game, a flow within the game that was a positive. So I watched the game, but all that really happened in the first half was that he hit the step backs.
Right.
And so my biggest, here's like the two sides of my brain. My biggest concern is that his entire productivity is dependent upon whether the step back goes in or not. And it just doesn't go in at a rate, and it won't go in at a rate in the playoffs that will be something that will make us feel comfortable. There's I agree with almost everything you said in terms of how he looks. I yelled on the pod like probably a week and a half ago, just lay the fucking ball up. Why won't he lay the ball up? And I think it's because he just doesn't have the boost off his leg to get up, and he's afraid it's going to get blocked. So he tries to initiate contact, and he is still a fantastic passer. He still does create tons of great looks for the other players on offense. I think the hedge I would make is that it still will come down to Embiid in the playoffs because it can't come down to Harden. But I do think whatever Harden does will provide the best opportunity for Embiid that he's had in the playoffs. He's still more effective than Jimmy on offense because Butler isn't like a great pick and roll ball handler and doesn't shoot. And having Maxey there, like as long as we're fine giving Maxey the ball in the last 10 seconds of a game, which is I would do over Harden. Just at this point, I'm sold. I'm in.
Yeah.
Then sure. Then they have a shot. But I would love to get Daryl's honest answer when he traded for him. Is just like, hey, did you know that this is where he was in his career, or did you think he was dogging it to get here? And for everyone that says to me, well, he's still dealing with the hamstring issue, that's fine, but he's had a hamstring issue for 2 years. Like that's such an extraordinary amount of time for a soft tissue injury that like why do we think it's ever gonna not be an issue at this point? So that's my whole feeling on it.
Yeah, well, the other thing is you look back, and even before the injuries, one of the things that he has struggled with is like adjusting in the face of adversity and sort of refining his approach as playoff defenses try to take away some of the step back stuff, or at least make those shots much harder, which they will do. And he never goes to the mid range, and he just doesn't really kind of alter anything that he's done and that has made him really, really successful over the last 10 years in the regular season. And again, if you look at his numbers in Philly, like they're still very, very good. And he is a star because there are things that he does passing wise. Like he makes a lot of really difficult things look effortless. And so he's a superstar in that regard. I was always someone who refused to take him seriously as a peer to guys like KD or Steph. And now like, that's not even a conversation, but the question is like, can he be a top 15 guy in the playoffs and someone who's going to be reliable for Embiid in fourth quarters? Cause that's when they are going to need him. I trust Embiid through the first couple of quarters, but like to close games with a low post guy, it's going to be a lot to ask of Embiid to have him be like the anchor on defense and do everything on offense. Do you think Doc would actually allow Maxey to be the guy who's sort of initiating things at the end of these games?
Well, not if he's trying to save his job and he's worried about Harden trying to chase him off the
right.
thing. I got crushed for this when I said it, but pre-bubble on the pod, I knew Brett Brown was going to get fired. I was a Brett Brown devotee, loved him. I knew he was going to get fired. Pre-bubble, I said, just fire him now and hire Ime Udoka, because we're going to lose this fucking guy. He's going to end up being a good coach somewhere else, and we're going to be scattered trying to find something else. And I still think we'd be in better position if we had Ime Udoka as opposed to Doc Rivers at this point. Doc Rivers is the most average great coach in the history of the NBA, and his stubbornness, like his desire, for a guy who's probably not on Twitter, he acts in a way that he is. Like, he just holds on to his takes for too long. And I just can't imagine him going, yeah, give it to Maxey. Because he'd be terrified that if it doesn't work, he's going to get skewered in the press conference afterwards from Harden, and Harden's going to chase him off. He's getting paid $9 million, whatever the fuck he's getting paid. Mm-hmm. I don't think so. I don't think he will.
The more things change. Way back when Brett Brown was in a tricky spot politically, because remember, he was like thinking about starting TJ McConnell, and then Ben Simmons his camp was upset. That was the Celtics series a couple of years ago.
Everyone thinks I'm too biased to say this, but he started TJ in the place of Covington. But what I always say is, in that game, he was starting in place of Covington, but he was really starting in place of Ben Simmons. Like, he doesn't play the same position that Covington plays. You know, He plays the same position as Ben Simmons. And yeah, it's a hard balancing act.
And Doc is so good at managing his own reputation. Like, I think obviously his press conference after the Hawks series last year has become like stuff of legend. Yeah. And people have hung on to that one comment about Ben Simmons. But at the same time, I did think it was telling that after a year of just lying to us over and over and over again about how much faith he had in Ben Simmons and how good Ben Simmons was, et cetera, the one time that he finally sort of let the mask slip was when people might have started asking questions about, like, Doc, how the fuck did you lose this series? Like, how is this possible? You guys have blown 20-point leads in several games. Like, and it was telling that Doc spun the conversation towards Simmons in that moment.
I asked Mike this on the last pod. I actually want to read an Apple review that I would never read with Mike on the pod, because it would start an argument, but an argument that we've already had. But this, because I want to ask you the question. If you want to leave us a 5-star rating, please do on Apple Podcasts. We're at 3,063. When we get to 4,000, I'll read all the reviews again. This comes from former sports radio listener. Subject line: Mike, please answer the questions. Spike asked Mike who would play more, number 25 or Harden. Mike spoke for 2 minutes, but still wouldn't answer. He never answers the questions Spike asks. We're not going to hold it against you if you're wrong. It's annoying. So I want to ask you the same question. Rest of their career, who plays more games, Ben Simmons or James Harden?
Ooh. Oh, man. I want to say Simmons. Simmons isn't going to retire from the NBA, right? I mean, I think Harden has another couple years in him. I mean, do you think he'll get like a full max from the Sixers?
So my thought is this. Yeah, I think it's definitely Harden. Harden will keep playing as long as they pay him. Harden will be fucking 285 pounds playing at 42 years old. I think he's just going to keep playing and playing and playing. Mm-hmm. And he's good enough. He's skilled enough, like in a sort of Peyton Manning sense. I would equate him in a lot of ways, in that as his body, he's so good at seeing everything and making the numbers good that he will probably be able to do that for a long time. I think it's on the table that Ben never plays again. I don't think there's a very high chance.
You've mentioned this a couple times to me, and I could see it. Certainly, I don't think he's going to play this season.
And he's not going to play for the Nets ever. They're going to trade him in the offseason, I believe.
For who?
I don't know. Halliburton and Barnes.
Oh my God, no! Like, he has such terrible trade value. This is the other thing. People were like, "Oh, like, what is Morey going to do?" I'm like, I think Morey was fielding terrible offers for Simmons for the first 8 months and had no choice but to stand pat, because it wouldn't make sense to trade Simmons for 10 cents on the dollar. Now that he's gone to Brooklyn and is either unwilling or incapable of taking the floor. If Sean Marks tries to deal him, like, what do you get for? I mean, he's owed a ton of money over the next couple seasons.
I think it's part of, the reports from Shams that like they still expect him to play this year. I think it's all setting up for offseason trade. I've said this so many times. Every day he puts this off, it becomes harder for him to come back. And it's not about Philly. It's about the entire league. It's about him. And every away game he plays, hell, every home game he plays, if it's not a large, home contingent where visiting fans come in, he's going to be faced with this. And avoidance is like a very serious way that people approach anxiety. And I don't want to get in the whole mental health conversation, but he has put himself in this position to where I do think that there is like a mental thing holding him back from this, obviously, that he has in part created. But it doesn't get any easier the more you put it off. It only gets harder. And I'll give credit, Steve McDonald, a friend and a Ricky listener, for like 6 months ago as this started. He goes, what do you think the chances are Ben never plays again? And I was like, 0.00001%. He's going to play. And I've upped that to like 1 or 2% because I think that there is a chance that he can just never face this.
Yeah. I mean, the mental health stuff was interesting because it seemed like he and his people were weaponizing it in the midst of their contract dispute and the labor dispute, which obviously felt pretty gross as it happened. But at the same time, anyone who's followed Simmons's career over the past couple of seasons, it's obvious that there is some mental baggage that he's got to work through. And I'm sure the past year or so has not made it any better. And the question is like, how seriously is he taking that aspect of it?
I think this sounds some like galaxy brain stuff, but I think they were weaponizing the mental health thing while still not personally admitting that the mental health thing was real, but deep down knowing that it was. And like I think there was like 3 levels to it, that Simmons being okay with it, but he never allowed them to say that he was suffering from anxiety or depression, just that his mental wasn't right and he wasn't mentally ready to play because he never wanted to even confront that publicly. Like I think there were several levels to it, but
that would be my concern is, are you taking steps to address any of this beyond citing it in the midst of your back and forth with the Sixers? And I think that's an open question. We have no idea, obviously, but I will say your question is hard to answer because I just have no idea what to make of Harden's future. I think you're probably right that he'll be willing to pay. He'll be willing to play as long as someone's willing to pay him. I'm curious as to how comfortable the Sixers are going to be giving him like $250 million or something over the next couple of seasons. But that question reminds me of your question about who would you rather have for the rest of their career, Fultz or Simmons? And I feel really comfortable choosing Markelle Fultz at this point.
Yeah, I tweeted that. I don't.
A couple
did I bring it up
ago.
on the pod? Yeah, I guess I did bring it up on the pod. Yeah, I would take Fultz in a second.
Yeah,
he's Ethan Strauss wrote about like Zoomer age athletes and the way that mental health is treated, and it's sort of rewarded publicly, like retreating from it, and it isn't rewarded publicly like the overcoming of it. And I think you can just look at Fultz, even though he is not what everyone expected. And the fact that he has battled through as difficult as all of that was, and still doesn't shoot correctly, like still can't figure that part out, but still continues to battle and get better and is loved by his teammates and all of those things, I think is like pretty telling, Yeah,
he was dealing with really serious adversity and serious mental hurdles of his own, and to be able to fight through some of that and come out the other side. And I look at him and I'm like, you know what, if he can keep that mid-range jumper, that like foul line jumper reliable, he can have like a 15-year career and not necessarily as a starter on a playoff team, and maybe as a starter, but at least a member of a rotation for a good team. Like that seems plausible to me with Fultz. And Simmons, it's just like, who the hell knows at this point? Okay.
But I want to ask you one last thing about Maxey and then just Sixers title odds. But before we do, you're obviously familiar with LL Pavorsky.
Of course.
Right?
My guy.
The original sponsor of the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. He texted me the other day. He's over 260 engagement rings to Rights to Ricky Sanchez listeners since he started advertising on the pod, which makes me think that he owes us like more, I think, than he gives us, but still always down for whatever. The only sponsor who has been on every Ricky road trip, the only sponsor who has been to every lottery party as well. The only sponsor who has been he forced us into accepting advertising basically. And he's been great since then. Over 30 years in the same location, right there at 707 Walnut. Every Ricky listener and Mike, one Ricky host who has purchased an engagement ring from him has said absolutely awesome experience. There is chocolate at the store when you go there. There's free chocolate. There is bottled water, and there is perfectly dressed LL Pavorsky. No stress, no pressure, none of that stuff. Just a dude who wants to get you an engagement ring at the right price, great shit, and not stressing you out about it. You can email him, call him, or tweet at him to get an engagement ring appointment with him, which is what you'll want. Email is lee@llpavorsky.com. Phone number is 215-627-2252. And Twitter is @llpavorsky. The Twitter does look a little unhinged. Just this is the first time you're seeing it, don't worry. He's like a pretty normal guy, a great guy. The Twitter does look unhinged. That's what happens when you get to a certain age. You're using social media. My dad's the same thing. Anyway, and always supports our charities, Providence Animal Center and Coded by Kids. You don't have to come up with a catchphrase. LL Pavorsky Jewelers, insert catchphrase here. Okay, before we get to Zoe, who has just signed on, Zoe, we will get to you in one moment. We have lost it over Maxey, and I kept trying to push it back and push it back and push it back, what I thought of him. Like, I just tried to stay more reserved, and then I just finally broke after the win, after the Heat. Mm-hmm. How good, I don't know how to answer this. Like, how good actually do you think he is as a non-Sixers fan?
As a non-Sixers fan, well, I was listening to your pod after the Heat game, and I heard Mike say he could be a top 30 guy. I don't think he's a top 30 guy now, but I think that's realistic over the next like 4 or 5 years. Like if he continues to get a little bit better and a little bit more reliable with the jumper, but the jumper has come so far. Like
I keep waiting for it to fall off. It doesn't fall off. I don't know what's going on.
You know what my favorite thing about Maxey is? He got drafted, and the night he got drafted, he was interviewed by ESPN, and he started talking about how in the month leading up to the draft, he had been working out with Rajon Rondo every morning at like 5 a.m. And I heard that, and I was like, well, this guy's going to be awesome. He's going to figure out a way to make it work and is going to have a long career. And he's been that, but what we've seen the last couple months has totally exceeded my expectations. So long-term, I think like fringe all-star is probably the most realistic outcome for Maxey. I don't see him as like an all NBA type guy.
And then last thing, I'm going to give you Eastern Conference, contenders, and you tell me percent chance they get to the finals.
Okay.
Nets.
Ooh, 20%.
Okay. Bucks.
70%.
Oh, okay. That's where I've been since the beginning of the year. I've been a Bucks. Okay. That only leaves 10% more. Heat.
Okay, well then let me lower the Bucks. 60% Bucks, 20% Nets. I would say 10% Heat.
Your boy Jimmy just finally hitting that point in Miami where he's threatening to beat up the coach. And
I was happy for you the other night. It's been going really well for Jimmy in Miami, so you were due for some Schadenfreude there. Good for you.
I would hire. By the way, I would fire Doc Rivers today and hire Udonis Haslem as head coach of the Sixers. 100%. I would 100%. Boston Celtics.
Not Spoelstra though.
No,
one of the most overrated coaches of all time in your book.
Has he won 50? Have they won 50 yet this year? Because he's never won 50 without LeBron. Boston Celtics.
10%.
And then Sixers.
0%. I have no more percent left.
Leaving on a high note. There he goes.
Sorry. I don't mean to be that guy, but I do not take them seriously as finals contenders.
I love it. Just on the way out. You were so nice about Maxey. So nice about Embiid.
Yeah. Embiid and Maxey are great. Everybody else, good luck.
They've dropped. I was actually going to try to find out why. In the last 9 days, they've gone from plus 650 to plus 800 to plus 900 to plus 1,000 at DraftKings to win the title. And it's just strange to me, because no big thing has happened, but some of that is trying to get money on it. I'm curious as to why that is. I'd be very curious as to why that is. All right.
Well, clip that segment. It'll be part of the title celebration.
Yep. Greatestofalltalk.com. You guys got that, right? To subscribe to the pod.
Yep.
And tell Ben to go fuck himself. He was wrong about Devin Booker. He was wrong about the league in general. He's wrong about just fucking everything. And I just want him to know that he was wrong.
First team All NBA Devin Booker. We're going to have a fun couple of months, so please subscribe.
Well, by the way, he should be first team All NBA with Morant, right? That should be the backcourt, right? Shouldn't it be?
I don't know about the final backcourt spot, but I heard the All NBA pod with Lowe, Devin Booker should be on the first team.
Yes.
And it's insane to me that that's not a given, but time will tell. Yeah.
All right. We'll see you later.
All right. Take it easy.
See you, Sharp. So we welcome to the pod the second guest co-host of the pod, of course, sponsored by, I had to switch things around to get Stateside for this pod, sponsored by one Stateside Vodka, who is sponsor of his Corner 3 newsletter. Got the iced tea and vodka right here, which is only 100 calories, just sweet enough, no carbonation, because iced tea doesn't have carbonation. We love Stateside Vodka. One, Mr. Alonzo Jones. How are you?
What's up, brother?
How you doing, man?
Good, man. How you feeling?
Appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, of course. Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday to you.
Yeah, my Euro step isn't the Mike Levin-esque, but I'll do my best to fill in for him.
So I'm going to tell you this because there's no way Mike will have listened this far in the pod. I don't think he ever listens to the pod. About 2 weeks ago, Mike had made the 75th reference to his basketball game in relation to the Sixers. And I decided to come up with a sound effect for that, to do this every time he does it. But I've only had the sound effect for 1 or 2 pods, and he hasn't done it. It's driving me fucking crazy. So I'm waiting for that, next time. So
it's my favorite. It's one of my favorite parts of the pod when he brings it up. I know he wants to. I know when he talks about the pick and roll and how he plays with a dude who's slew-footed.
Yeah,
I love it so much.
It's so good. So I have a Bradley Beal game I want to play with you a little bit. Not Bradley Beal game, a Tyrese Maxey game. That actually gives a hint as to what we're going to talk about. But I have a Tyrese Maxey game I want to play with you later. And of course, I want to tell everyone to subscribe to the newsletter at writesrickysanchez.com/newsletter.
Absolutely.
But I wonder if nobody knows your origin story. You know what I mean? I'm in media, sort of makes sense. Mike was writing for Liberty Ballers.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, just out of thin air, immaculate conception. Fucking there's Zoe in the middle of it.
Ready to rock and roll.
Right. Now, I met you when you were working for, what hospital was it?
Einstein,
right. Working for Einstein.
Yep.
And I was doing a whole endorsement thing and you were working there. But do you want to give anyone your origin story as to how you ended up right here in the middle of sort of the Sixers online media?
So it's actually funny because I do think about it a lot, right? How crazy our sports media world has gotten, and kind of my tiny little corner in it. But so I want to say probably the first year of the official tank, right? So everybody knows that the process is 26 years long.
Yep.
So
yeah, 1986
right,
is when
1986 is when it started. Right.
Yeah.
The first year of tanking is when I got really into two things. Like I would say, one, Liberty Ballers, and two, I got really into or started to get really into Twitter. And it's funny because I actually started grad school at the same time when Sam Hinkie got hired, and we actually had to make a Twitter for a grad school project. So I didn't even think twice about it. I made my name, and I was like, I'm never going to use this again, dude. Like I have no clue how Twitter works or whatever. And then, right, so famous last words. But I started just listening to you guys, and because I was like, wait a minute, like how am I going to get through? Like who loves the Sixers as much as I do right now, right? Like I literally just started dating Shayna, and she's like into basketball, but she was also like, you're not dragging me to watch a 10-72 basketball game in basketball. So I was like, all right, that's fair. So I'm like just trying to find, who's into it as much as me or whatever. And then I found this weird basketball, kind of community and online. And I really started getting into the Liberty Ballers articles, which is where I started reading, some of Mike's stuff. And then I started, really getting into listening to the pod. And then it really ramped up. Like my Twitter usage really ramped up the day that Sam resigned. I've never been. I was like, this really sucks. I'm like, this sucks so much. Like I remember leaving. We had an event that day, and I got in my car, and I had like 10 texts from a couple of my buddies, and then my dad called me and was like, yo, like, did you hear? I was like, you definitely didn't hear. You didn't text me. And I was like, hear what? And sure enough, the news dropped, and then I was like, all right, well, I got to figure out like how to compartmentalize this, because I need to have it processed correctly. So like that's where like my usage really, really ramped up. And then all of a sudden, like how you do online, I just started like replying to stuff. I started like retweeting the pod, or just like, really listening to or just trying to come up with my own little, process related tweets. And then this is actually not even a basketball thing. The thing that my tipping point was the old head tweet.
The tweet. The tweet.
It was the tweet. That was my official tipping point. And fast forward to 2 summers ago now, Mike reaches out like the same week that you reached out and was like, look, like, talk to Spike. And like you were the first person I brought up to take over a newsletter, because Kristen was leaving, whatever. And he's like, Spike's going to reach out to you. And obviously you and I spoke that week. And I was like, there's like no better time than the present type thing. And that's what brings us to today. But that's the origin story. The origin story is a non-basketball tweet, which is very funny for the Twitter world.
Well, it has become a world within a world, and not every city has this, and not every team has this. It's like its own. This world itself decides who are the people in the world. It is pretty wild.
Yeah, it's nuts because I do the same thing with like folks on Eagles Twitter and Philly Twitter. They have their world within the world, and that world decides like who the OGs are and like who the up and coming like kind of hot shots are. And like it's funny to have people be like, oh, like you're like people everybody on Sixers Twitter talks about you all the time. And I'm like, it still blows your mind that like people continue to kind of look to you for any kind of expertise related to this dumbass basketball team.
And before we get to the actual team talk, you have a way, which I do not. You have a way of expressing opinions that might be polarizing without getting people to be mad at you. Because like the whole time that I was out on Ben, and people would get so mad at me.
Oh yeah.
And I would look at you and I'd be like, fucking Zoe is also out on Ben, but nobody's mad at him. So maybe it's just because I'm an asshole and you're not. Like maybe that's the difference. But you have fucking perfected it, and I give you credit,
dude. It comes from years of trying to be, and working in the PR profession. Like you just have to walk that line as long as you can, but also be very, very, very like distinct in your verbiage and exactly how you say it. And like you said, like sometimes when you're out, you're out. I think I was officially out right around the same time as everyone else. But I think the way that I was trying to say it was, we still may need him. Like I wasn't at that point, there was no inclination that Harden wanted out and that the Nets were even like listening to anything from Morey. Brad Bill was saying, that he was coming back. Dame for the millionth time was letting us know that he wasn't leaving. He wasn't leaving Portland. So I still was like, all right, well, I can't be the guy. And people are like, oh, this dude hated Ben. Now, Ben's coming back and he's locking up such and such and getting us to the ECF. But when we washed our hands of him, dude, like I was feeling the same as everyone else. Like I didn't care anymore.
So 3 hard questions that you have to answer, and then we play our Tyrese Maxey game.
All right, let's do it.
First hard question. Nobody's listening. This is not on the internet. This is just you and me talking. % chance the Sixers win the title this year?
5%.
Okay. All right, that's fair. That's fair.
Do I have to give reasoning, or do you?
Yeah, you can give reasoning. Yeah.
I think it's tough to. My 2 biggest reasons. One, I think a team with DeAndre Jordan as their backup center just can't survive. I will pivot. I will pivot to say I also don't think that it's tough when you want to depend on young guys. Mm-hmm. And I know Bassey and B-Wall Paul, as much as we all love them, are both young guys. And sometimes I think Kyle Neubeck had a great article about this. Shout out to Kyle. But there was sometimes when you have to depend on young guys to do stuff like that, it tends to backfire. But I don't trust the backup center position at all. But I still rather see Bassey or Reed there. And second, I just think an offense that has 2 guys who are just ignored routinely, it's just really tough to overcome in the playoffs, man. Especially when rotations start to tighten up. Like you saw it last night and games before. Teams just totally ignored Matisse. Like not even for minutes, for literally lengths of the game. Like you'll be 2 quarters. And you're like, oh, why are they still running 2 men at Harden? And it's like, oh yeah, because Matisse. No one cares about what Matisse is going to do in offense.
Well, the problem is he can get hot for like 2 games or 3 games, but he's going to need to be hot for like 2 months.
Like 2 months, right?
Yeah,
right. He's going to have a smoke in 2 months. And the same with Tobias. Like Tobias he'll have his stretches where he goes, we've seen it 20, 25, whatever, but he's got to have a hot 2 months. And I'm just not sure. I don't know if either of them have that in them yet. I even put it in the newsletter. So that's I give them 5%, but it's low because that's my legit, what worries me.
I don't think it's that low, honestly. I actually think when you talk to Daryl, I don't know if his numbers would be, he might have it at 10 or something, which is obviously more than, but all right. Again, nobody listening. Just you and me talking. This is not on the internet. What % is James Harden saving it for the playoffs? And what % is James Harden maybe just a little doesn't have it anymore?
I'll give it 60%. He's saving it for the playoffs, and I give it 40%. He's losing some juice.
Yeah.
I will say that the hamstring certainly is not 100% yet. And he even said it, and I think the team is saying it. I think it's the reason why they have him running those crazy wind sprints like before and after the game, because he's still, the hamstring still is not, it's still kind of bummy, I'm sure. And I think the other part of it is that I'm certain there's been a conversation in the brain trust, coach, player, and management that like this is we're playoff motherfuckers. The story of this team will be written, starting April 16th. And like, however you can, everybody has different opinions on that, but with 8 games left, I don't doubt that they're going to take their foot off the gas even more. It's weird though. So I would like to hear your thoughts on this, because I don't think that even they thought that they'd be a half game out of first at this point.
I agree with you there.
So I think a lot of that's out the window now. I would really like to know. I don't have a read on what the leaders of that team, the Harden and Embiid, and probably Tobias, because he's a guy I looks up to in the locker room, what they're saying in terms of like how they want to play it, because they're a half game out. They're only 1 game above the Celtics, and probably the hottest team in the league. So they could be literally in 2 weeks anywhere from 1 to 4.
Well, if they get the 2 seed, they're going to play the Nets.
Right, you get 2 seeds, you pull the Nets. So the science is you either shoot for 1 and you win the 1 seed by 2 or 3 games, or you don't get 2 and you just go for 3 or 4. It's a huge that top 4 is so jumbled because they're all only separated by 1.5 games. It's going to be a mad dash.
I don't think they all have the same attitude toward it. I think Embiid would love to be the guy who only cares about the playoffs. He just can't do it.
Yeah.
Like he can't get into the brain where he's like, take off all these games, because he looks at every game. Every game we see that he's questionable. I will defend Doc Rivers on this. It has always been about, does Joe want to go or does Joe not want to go?
Right.
Like all those games, it's not, it's always been about him. And I think the reason he plays so much is because he can't just be a playoff guy. I think Harden would take off the rest of the season if you let him.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know what Tobias is. I think they are, there's such a big difference, I believe, between the 1 seed and the 2 seed.
Yeah.
That they're going to keep going for the 1 seed until they can't get it. And maybe they punt the last 3 games to get out of 2 or something like that, All right. Final question before the Maxey game. No one listening. Jalen Hurts, Mr. Right or Mr. Right now?
Jalen Hurts is Mr. Right. I have to stay consistent.
Okay.
I've been calling him Mr. Right, but I will preface it with this. I don't think the team thinks that he's Mr. Right. I think he's Mr. Right.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I'm not speaking for anyone else. But I think that I don't think that the team is moving as such that makes me think that they think he's more than Mr. Right now, which is totally fine. But I get it. There's questions, and there should be. I think he showed a lot of progress, but he also showed a lot of things that would scare you. But I think he can be and should be Mr. Right at least.
All right. So here's the game. Tyrese Maxey has become the 3rd star, right? Yep. I mean, he is the 3rd best player. I think something I said on a pod and the other night that I actually don't think many people would fight with me on. Yep. In the last 10 seconds in a game, I'd rather give it to Maxey than I would give it to Harden at this point.
Yeah. Yep.
It's at least a debate, right? Mm-hmm. He's probably not there yet to be the 2nd or 3rd best player on a title team, but he's been forced into this way better than I ever thought he was going to be, especially this quickly. Yes. And I keep waiting for the shot. So what I'm going to do is give you the names, because I'm trying to find your line, give you the names of NBA players. And would you trade Tyrese Maxey straight up for this player?
Okay.
Salary considerations totally out the window. Okay. I just say you can have player A for Tyrese Maxey. Okay. Would you do it? We ready?
Yep.
Okay. The beginning ones I think are pretty easy, but let's just do them. Giannis.
Giannis, yes.
Luka.
No.
Oh, wow. We got to know right away. No on Luka. Okay. All right. I love that. All right. We're playing a different game than I thought we were playing. I love it. All right. I'll take it. Ja Morant.
Ja Morant, yes.
Trae Young.
Trae Young, no.
Really?
No. I believe I like Trey. I like Trey a lot, even since the playoffs. I don't think I moved Maxey for him.
I think Trae Young is a murderer in a way that Maxey might not be, might be, but has not shown that he is. And like, I sort of like that part of Trae Young's personality. Though I think he would be tough for Embiid to play with.
I'm playing this game thinking about who I think Joe would play with personality wise and skill wise. I think you're right. I think that he would be a tough draw for Joe. And I'm also thinking about guys you'd have to sell Joe on. Like if you're like Joe, the Bucks are out on Giannis. But they want Maxey. I'm sure he'd be like, yeah, go get him.
Right.
So like that's how I'm playing it. So those are the only reason for my instant notes.
Okay, Jason Tatum.
Yes, I do.
Okay, all right. Okay, Devin Booker.
Oh yes.
Okay, Donovan Mitchell.
Ooh, it's tough. Donovan Mitchell. Yes, I'll do that.
Okay. All right, don't worry. We're gonna get to the no's. Well, you've already given me a couple of no's that I didn't imagine, so that's good. Jokic.
No.
You wouldn't even try Embiid and Jokic?
No, I don't know. No.
Okay.
No,
all right. Steph Curry.
Yes.
Paul George.
Yes, I would. I love Paul George. I love Paul George so much, man. I think he is. I've been saying this team was one Paul George away before they got James Harden. Obviously.
Yep.
Yeah.
Kawhi,
yes.
Damian Lillard.
No. I was anti when we all thought there was a chance, and I'm anti now. I wouldn't send him for Dame.
Okay. Brad Beal.
Woo. You know what? I wouldn't do it. Because look, and I love Brad Beal, dude. You and I talked about this. I love Brad Beal so much, but Brad Beal and James Harden on the same team, you got to give me some kind of reprieve from those personalities.
There's a lot of no offense to James Harden, no offense to Brad Beal. There's a lot of loser energy in that backcourt. There's just a lot of loser energy. That's all I'm saying is that Maxey, there's no loser energy with Maxey whatsoever.
Right.
At least at this point in his career.
Right.
Brad Beal, let's call a spade here. Brad Beal actively decided to get surgery instead of coming to the Sixers this year. That happened. You know what I mean? Like, that's loser energy.
Yeah. He was gone. Like that article, I believe the article. He was like before, like it was done, and he said, "I'm getting my wrist done, my wrist work done." So he opted to, get his surgery instead of ring chase. That's loser energy to me too.
And I actually think I've evolved, and I've said this about Damian Lillard. The players who are like, "Hey, I live here. I like it here. I like the organization. I like being here. I might not win a title, but I enjoy my life." That's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever. But Beal has loser energy about him.
And I feel like we may, like, who's to say that we won't ever get to that point with Maxey? Like, if teams start calling, he could get to that point or like a little bit below that level, and teams could start calling, and he could just be like, "Yeah, no, like, I like the city, I like the fans, and I like, the life I made here. Like, I'm staying." And then we got to defend him. We'll have to defend him. Like, the guy can make his own decisions, so on and so forth. But
Embiid might be that guy, by the way.
Right, it might be Joe. Like,
I
think we are. I think we're trending toward that with Joe, like, quicker than we think. I think he's a guy who, at least I hope, I know that there was some deep damage done from when Sam left and the other things that happened, since between him and ownership. But I feel like we're getting as close as we probably can to him saying, like, I'm here for life type stuff.
Okay. Anthony Edwards.
No. I like Ant. I like Ant, dude.
I'm a little disappointed in that one. I would do it for Anthony.
This game sucks because I love Maxey so much.
I know. That's why I said it was a difficult game.
That's why this is a very hard game to play. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna be playing this all day because I love him so much. And I'm like, I don't know who I would give up.
All right, I have like 8 more for you.
Yep.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
For SGA, no, I wouldn't do SGA.
I actually agree. That team should be better if he's on that team, even if the team isn't good. Like he's good, but I don't know. I think he should be a little better than he is. De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah, no.
Okay, agree with you there. Jaylen Brown.
Jaylen Brown. You know what? Between him and Tatum, I actually like him better. So yeah, I would do it.
Karl Anthony Towns.
For Cat, no, I wouldn't do it for Cat.
I agree. I think he also, even though they're winning, I think he has supreme loser energy. Yeah. LaMelo Ball.
For Melo, this might be the toughest one because I'm a big Melo fan. But I don't know. Personality wise, I'm not sure. So I would say no. I'm out on that one.
I would say yes after being anti LaMelo pre-draft. I just watch him. I'm like, that guy's fucking good.
Yeah, he's good, man.
Desmond Bane.
Oh, for Desmond, no, I wouldn't do it. I love Bane. He's really good.
Miles Bridges.
Miles Bridges, no. These are all guys I love too. Miles Bridges should have been a Sixer.
3 more. Darius Garland.
Darius Garland, no.
Oh, come on.
But I love.
I think you're crazy on that one. To me, Darius Garland, like his Maxey ceiling is like I just think Garland's ceiling is so much high. I just think he's such a better passer now, and I truly 100 legit believe in his shot. Whereas Maxey, I still think there's a world in which it comes back to earth, but Garland, I believe, can shoot. Like Garland looks to me like Kyrie, but an actual point guard. That's what Garland reminds me of. I think Garland is going to be like one of the 6 or 7 best players in the league at some point.
I loved it when he was in college, but his game is translated so well. He's really good. He's also he's tough, man. On offense, I mean on both sides of the ball, he's really tough, and he can score. And he can really get it done. I agree with you that his ceiling's probably a little higher. I think the only reason that I'm out is because I feel like I don't know about the leadership aspect, right? So I think that's a lot of it too. I think Maxey's become someone in that locker room that everyone's just drawn to. You know what I mean? Like even the guys older than him, like 21, so a lot of guys in that locker room are older than him. But other than that, I mean, I do love Darius. I would have done a variation of the Ben trade where we got Darius Garland back, but I never thought that Cleveland was going to.
No, I don't think they would trade him.
I never bought that one.
And I might as well not even ask this, given the nose that you've given me. But I was going to give you Fred VanVleet, but obviously you're going to say no.
Right? No.
Yeah, this is like you ruined the game by giving me a no on Luka like two seconds.
My bad. No, that's my bad, man. You know this is a really good game because you know how much I love my guy.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about it because I was with some people and we were talking about just like how good that Ja Morant was playing, and I was like, he's one guy I would give Maxey up for. And I was like, absolutely, like if they were like, look, Ja all of a sudden hates the Deep South, like what?
Right.
Would you give us Maxey and picks for him? I was like, yeah, like absolutely.
He's bananas. Ja Morant's bananas. Well, I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, man, of course.
It really feels like this has been honestly, after the initial Harden juice of it, the season got real long, it feels like. And the next couple of weeks are going to be real long, but the playoffs, because the East is so good, is going to go from it's going to be bananas immediately.
It's going to be nuts. And, the dog days of the last few weeks of the season they always draw on. But I feel like playoffs is going to be, there's always like those. I don't think there's going to be this year those 1 or 2 series where you're like, this first round takes forever and it's boring. I think every first round in the East it's going to be a bloodbath. I don't care who you're playing against. I actually think that it's going to be a really, really, really fun playoffs. I'm excited to see. Outside of the Sixers, like I'm excited to see like what a team like the Celtics look like, and you know how the Bucks, who have been like just quietly trudging along, and you know
going to end up with the number 1 seed,
and right, probably end up with the number 1 seed, and you know how they attack things, and to see how the Suns do. Really, you know, I mean, 60-win team that just absolutely mowed down everybody in their way this year. I'm excited to see like what they look like, and you know what the playing games bear for us. I think it's going to be nuts, man. I think we're setting up for a really, really crazy NBA playoffs.
Well, you can subscribe to Zoe's newsletter at writestorickysanchez.com/newsletter. Also on Twitter at tweets by Zoe with underscores in between tweets.
Yep.
And by. You use the underscore effectively. Normally I'm not pro underscore, but I don't have a problem with that on that one. All right, man.
All
right. So that was Zoe. Hey, CJ, you want to say the end thing with no mic? Want to pop on? Oh, you know what? I meant to bring up Zoe, and I didn't. You understand the controversy going on now, CJ, about whether you should be addressed in the emails.
I've been seeing it. I saw it in the rundown. So I've seen the polls. I've seen the polls, articles. Everything that's been
the polls
about
basically ended up at 50-50. You know, one YouTube user, Jacob, was just like, CJ shouldn't be in the email salutations with Spike and Mike. He hasn't earned it. We love CJ, but he hasn't earned it. Do you have a feeling on whether you should be addressed?
I'm not swayed to one side or the other. I'm just happy that there are arguments on both sides, that it's like relevant enough that people are like passionate about both sides. It keeps me balanced, but it's a good feeling all in all, because you know, like, all press is good press. It's
a true deep Ricky argument.
Yeah.
Deep Ricky argument. Yeah. All right. We'll talk to you Thursday after the Pistons game as Mike returns. Thanks to Sharp. Thanks to Zoe. Are you down with TTP?
Yes. You know, lick face.